Hello, welcome back to Meraki Unboxed. My name's Simon Thompson, your host for today, and it's awesome to have you back with us once again. We are today recording a special episode where we're going to bring in one of our technology partners to talk about how they are using Meraki technology as well as other technologies to promote a brand new sort of business opportunity, which I think really does a good job of bringing technology and the physical worlds together. So I'm very excited to get into that conversation. Before we start that, I just want to do a quick reminder for anybody who's tuning in for the first time. We do this podcast every 2 weeks, and the goal that we have here is to try and provide you with valuable and interesting content to listen to. And that means that we love to hear your feedback, and we also love to have your participation, which of course is how today's episode came about. So if you have any ideas for a show or you would like to be on the Meraki Unboxed podcast yourself, do please reach out to me, and you can find me very easily on Twitter. @Meraki Simon is my handle on there, and I check that every single day. So do please leave a message, and even if it's just some feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Just know that you're enjoying the show. We know the kind of listenership we're getting, and it's pretty healthy and consistent. So thank you so much for being with us and hopefully being a subscriber on here as well. Obviously, the easiest way to get these episodes into your smartphone or whichever device you prefer to use is to use that subscription option. And of course, as we get back to, in certain parts of the world, slightly more normality, we start to get back in our cars and driving around and commuting again, we really hope to be able to entertain you, provide some great stuff to listen to while you're doing that. Or if you're a healthy person, you're out running, something like that, whatever it is, we'd love to know how you're listening. So let me know. All right, let's get into today's episode. And I would like to welcome Stephen von Takach, who is the CIO at PlaceOS. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Simon. Glad to be on the podcast.
Very happy to have you here as well. And where are you calling in from today?
Calling in from chilly Sydney, Australia.
Ah, yes, of course. It's the middle of winter down there. What do you call chilly in Sydney?
Oh, probably like 13 degrees.
All right, so really not that chilly, but it's all relative, right? It's all relative.
Exactly.
And for anybody in the US, that's Celsius, and is actually quite a comfortable temperature. It's something like 50. I'm not brilliant at Fahrenheit, so hopefully that works. But thank you so much, Stephen. And we're recording this at a time of day where it's fairly early for Stephen, so really appreciate him joining us at this time to join us on the show. So, Stephen, tell us a little bit about what you do and your organization.
I'm one of the co-founders of PlaceOS, and what we're really trying to do is create an integration platform where we take data from a whole lot of different sources and provide a common interface to access that data. And that's really powerful because once you have that common interface, it's very easy to perform actions based on data that's coming from totally different sources. So that's sort of the crux of what we do. And that sounds very generic, but it ends up being quite a powerful solution once you put everything together.
I'm sure it does. And we'll definitely unpack a little bit of that as we get through this conversation. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. What attracted you into this space, and how did you come to be joint co-founder of this business?
I actually started at university, and I got a job while studying, working in the AV department, which is effectively we were designing and programming lecture theaters. And as part of that work, I ended up writing a digital signage solution for the university because they'd bought a solution that didn't work very well. And that got patented. So we spun off a company to try and sell that bit of software, more of a feature, not a product. It's a hard sell, but because of our experience in the automation space, we sort of pivoted towards building automation.
That's what led you into actually this business itself?
Yeah, that's right. So we've gone through a few different rebrandings, and we're probably on the third iteration of the product. It's been an interesting few years getting to this point. A lot of mistakes made in the early days. You're young and
right,
and your vision is clear, but the skills aren't quite there to get there. But I feel like at this point, our product is extremely solid and battle tested in the marketplace as well.
Yeah, the startup world is definitely an interesting one. It demands so much energy, but it's also quite an exciting ride. I think I'm sure you have some good stories and memories from the early days. But like you said, it's a journey, and you're learning super fast in that mode.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so tell me a little bit about PlaceOS and the reason it exists. Like, what is the problem that we're really trying to solve here?
There's actually multiple layers to this. So our big focus at the moment has been workplace experience. So some of the core problems in that area, if you're going to work, you need to find a desk to sit, especially in modern workplaces where it's often hot desking, or you need to find a colleague at work because it's a big building and you don't know where they're sitting. So solving those two problems are probably the most critical. On top of that, there's room scheduling, so looking for a meeting room, these resources that are quite limited, and there's a lot of demand for them.
Absolutely.
So making sure you can find those spaces to have a meeting or talk to a client, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, those I can definitely relate to that. The number of times that, well, it's a distant memory at this point after what is it, 15 months of working from home. But I definitely remember before we were working in the office every day, and meeting room space just so elusive. I mean, you and just managing it, and what do you do if people have booked the room but then they don't show up? There's all kinds of challenges there, and that's just one of those use cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we obviously try to free that room if no one turns up. But then there's the whole technology piece in the meeting rooms as well. So we control, say, the lighting, the TV in that room, the video conference system. The whole idea is to make it as seamless experience as possible. Being able to see at a glance, like what meetings you have today, which rooms they're in, being able to click on a map to see where you need to go. The people in the meeting, like if there's back-to-back meetings, notifying the people in the room that their meeting has to end soon, things like that.
Oh, I like that one. That's definitely a good one, especially because meetings are often booked back to back. I often wonder why all the calendaring software defaults to 30 minutes or 1 hour for meeting length, because it certainly doesn't help people in that regard, especially if you're actually got to walk around a physical building.
Yeah, it's actually quite a challenging problem because the calendaring systems are quite solid in the way they allow bookings. Because we try to be flexible and let you, say, book using Outlook or Google Calendar or whatever, and then we're taking that data and analyzing it. But we do have clients where we've built custom room booking experiences for, because it just makes it easier to filter for features that you want, like capacity, this technology mix, I want catering and things like that. And then we can enforce, say, a 5-minute buffer from the app side. But then if they book from the calendaring system, you can't enforce that buffer. So then we've just come up with like unique ways of notifying people that the time is almost up without interrupting the meeting.
I like it. I can picture a traffic light system like they do with speakers on a stage. Like you got your green, amber, red. No, I think that's great stuff. And just taking it a step back to this kind of concept of experience, I think it's a very interesting one, and one which has certainly gained a lot of attention more recently, and for good reason, because people respond well to good experiences and they come back. And so when we think about how we satisfy our customers, if they're having good experiences, that's obviously a reason to go back to that vendor again. But even for employees, I mean, if you want to retain like your best talent, you've got to make it as easy as possible for them to be as productive as they want to be there. There's all these little ways in which you can remove friction from the sort of physical environment and some of the technology challenges that we have, right?
Yeah, these days especially, trying to encourage people to come back to the office. I'm not sure how far along the US is on that path, but in Australia, there's been a big push to try and encourage people back to the office. And so, I don't know, the solutions people are coming up with around like gamifying the office, free coffees if you come in on Mondays and things like that.
Right, nice.
Because I feel like working from home's good. People probably don't need to be in the office as much as they used to be, but it's still good to have that office interaction, because there's a lot of interesting connections that can be made.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's definitely something that you adjust to, this working from home thing, and I think that certain types of work you can absolutely do very effectively at home, but that sort of serendipity side of things, that sort of just having a conversation over the water cooler or a cup of that free coffee that you were talking about. I mean, that stuff's priceless, and it really can make a difference to how effectively teams can collaborate together. So, you mentioned the US, and I think as we're recording this, I mean, we're at the stage really where businesses are just starting to consider their reopening plans, and maybe the sort of critical staff are now starting to come back. But it's inevitable what's going to happen, and I think the interesting thing is it's unlikely to go back to what it was before. That's what we've been hearing from everybody everywhere, and so this mix in itself is going to throw up some interesting technology challenges, because now you've got to think about how you manage inclusion when not everybody who is relevant for a meeting is actually physically in the room with you.
Yeah, and there's other things as well, because companies are downsizing the amount of office space they have, which means if everyone rocked up to work at once, there's probably not enough desks, or at least that's sort of the experience that's happening in Australia. So then it becomes even more important to be able to locate those free desks.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about this concept of smart buildings, that's something which I think probably many people will have heard that term before, and it's been used for a number of years, and I'm sure that we're a good way on that journey. But I'm quite curious, because I've heard of some of the things we're using and some of the sensors that we're using, and obviously Meraki has some of those as well. Where do you consider us to be on this journey of smart buildings? What is kind of hot in the world of smart buildings right now?
Some of the areas that we're getting into is fully integrating with the BMS systems.
That is
so it's reasonably.
Which one is that?
The building management systems.
Of course.
So the very low level systems for security, HVAC, plumbing, and all the various different building sensor systems. We've done quite a lot in the security space, and I feel like that's added a lot of smarts to a building. So visitor flows, for instance, if you invite a visitor to a building, depending on what technology mix is in the building, we can generate a, say, Bluetooth access card for them that allows them to use their phones to get to the meeting that they've been invited to without having to go through any kind of like check-in at a concierge desk or anything like that. They just have direct access to get to the floor they need to be on.
Nice.
And part of that process is they swipe through the gates. We detect that swipe. We can notify the host that the guest has arrived and they're on their way up. If they log into the Wi-Fi system, so we've integrated with Meraki's captive portal, and that allows us to track the guests through the building, so the host can see where they are and make sure they're not going to the wrong place or doing something they're not meant to. I mean, one of the clients we had enforces that, so they have to go through the captive portal system before they get their swipe card access. And then that also ties into, say, emergency systems. So if the fire alarm goes off, we know who's in the building roughly, because most people take their phones, so we can look at the various APIs of Meraki and be like, we can see 6 mobile phones still in the building, which is really helpful when engine arrives and we're trying to work out who's still in there or who's exited.
There's so many components to this, and you can really see how we can just remove various levels of friction from an experience for a guest coming on site. I mean, we all know, we've all experienced that thing where we go to a strange company and we have to sort of deal with the security and the sort of all of the getting registered and all of that side of things. This sounds like a much more Well, it really is the smartest way to do it, right? You're leveraging all the technology that's available already today, but just pulling it all together into one cohesive experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess this is what PlaceOS is essentially trying to help do, right? But there's so many different aspects to it. How do you describe the way that PlaceOS is helping? If you're in front of a client for the first time, pitching your solution, how do you begin that conversation?
So usually we start with examples, because I feel like a lot of clients or potential clients haven't even thought about a lot of these experiences. People don't know what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually sometimes frustrating when you get like an RFI or an RFP, and they've specified in very succinct terms that this is what we're after, and you're sort of like, it seems a bit limited, really.
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't take much to make this into a much more expansive solution. So yeah, I feel like it's looking at case studies is the initial touch point,
Mm-hmm.
and then letting the clients come up with their own ideas for their building, because a lot of it does hinge on the technology mix. So new buildings, it's often easier, especially if we get in early and work out what experiences the client actually wants, because then they can select technologies that'll make that all possible.
Right.
And so older buildings are usually more limited, which is actually why Meraki is great, because a lot of the older buildings install Meraki, and that, just say Meraki and Office 365 or Google, those two technologies give you most of the experiences you could want from a workplace. So they're sort of the keystone technologies, I'd say, like a calendaring system that everyone uses, and then a good backbone for being able to locate people on a network.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Meraki makes it easy. Like if you want to deploy it as a SaaS solution, it's very easy with those two technologies as well. As soon as you get into the inner workings of a building and you're touching the actual technology in the building, then clients are a bit more nervous about where their data is going.
Mm-hmm.
So we often will deploy on their private clouds or their private data center, because we don't really care about that data, but we want the client to feel safe and secure with their physical access and network access and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are understandably, I mean, we all are very wary of giving away more information than we need to. But as you said, it's really serving a very specific purpose in this case. It's completely understandable. Also liked what you said about the RFPs, so having to quote for businesses who assume that they've already figured all this out and they know exactly what they want. But it is always a challenge, because you don't know what you don't know, and so for any business, it's really so valuable to just be able to have a conversation, so that you can sort of get those creative juices flowing and spark some ideas. Like you said, I'm sure your customers start coming up with all kinds of ideas that helps you as well in turn. So thinking about the examples, the case studies, which are your favorite ones? Which ones do you start with typically?
The guest access systems, the ones that I really enjoy, because that's a product. I end up going to client sites quite a lot, and that is really a jarring and annoying experience for me. So being able to make that seamless for an organization is exciting. I feel like the Meraki wayfinding and people finding and desk finding is also one of my favorite solutions, just because you can visualize everything on a map, see capacity of various areas, and it's just a nice visual feedback of what's happening in the building.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the list of technology integrations that you have on your website, and it's a pretty long list. And I think we've just scratched the surface with some examples around sort of location and sort of sensors and things like that. Talk us through some of the other technology integrations that you focus on that make up this big picture you're able to provide for your customers.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really just because it's all experience driven. There's just a lot of different bits of software and hardware that companies install and use. So it might be a messaging platform, and we want to have, say, a virtual catering system, and people can order coffee from the meeting room using a chatbot or something like that. Uh, then there's, say, one of the things we're doing more recently is like desk bookings. Uh,
Hmm.
so to be COVID safe, I
Right.
mean, there's some regulations in various parts of the world, and people have to book a desk, and then they want manager approval. So we're using directory services to work out who's this person's manager and getting them to approve the office visitation. Um, yeah, and then just the range of sensors in a building, from motion sensors to people counters to air quality sensors.
Mm.
And air quality is an interesting one because if you integrated with the air conditioning, you can turn that up and down based on air quality, or open windows even. And yeah, then just the range of different meeting rooms and conference rooms and presentation spaces and all the technology that goes into those systems.
Yeah, and a lot of that technology's been around for obviously quite a while. Do you find that you're able to get the hooks that you need with a lot of this, or does it really require sort of latest and greatest?
Oh no, so it's been around for a long time. I mean, sometimes that's the actual challenge because they're using such insecure protocols.
Mm.
So we did work for, we've done a couple of banks, and their network requirements are obviously extremely strict. And just sometimes getting access to the more simpler devices is the more difficult problem, just due to the fact that they run like a really old version of Android,
Mm.
or just the protocol is fully clear text, and it's just a security nightmare for some organizations.
Yeah, that's the
But
one challenge with this technology. There's just so much to keep on top of with keeping OSs up to date and security patches and all the rest of it.
yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of exciting new technology. So Google's, I think it's Connected Home IP
Hmm.
consortium, which where Google, Apple, Amazon, and a lot of other companies, Zigbee, I think, as well, have come together to create a unified IoT platform. It's mostly based off Thread, which is Google's IoT network,
Hmm.
and it should alleviate a lot of those problems because the actual networking protocol is extremely secure. So it's sort of like secure in depth, and even when the software's out of date, it shouldn't really affect the actual network. So that's reasonably exciting. It'll be interesting to see the uptake of that sort of technology, because it's coming out of the home IoT, but it's being made enterprise ready.
Right. And that's one of the interesting things about this, because it's something that we can all relate to. We all have these technologies in our homes, and quite often it's more advanced than what we find in the office in a lot of cases. So it's good to hear that that it's helping to sort of drive innovation in the office environment. And like you said, we've got all these compelling events happening around us now, around hot desks and people coming back to the office in a different way to how they were before. So there's certainly a lot of opportunity, it seems, in front of us there. So let's just talk about the Meraki integrations quickly. I mean, you've touched on those a couple of times already. Talk me through the APIs themselves, the use of those, how you found them, how easy they've been to integrate into what you do. Maybe just give me a sense of what you're taking advantage of on the Meraki side.
Yeah, so Meraki is probably the easiest platform we've worked with. Um,
I didn't pay
I
you.
think
We didn't pay you to say that, did we?
no, no.
Okay.
um, I, I feel like it's because it's a software as a service system. It makes it very easy because there's only a few touch points that need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're looking at, say, other Cisco hardware, you're often integrating with solutions that sit on site, which I mean, which makes it a little bit more challenging. But the captive portals been a very interesting one. It's because that allows a lot of guest experiences. Then we use the dashboard API mostly for discovery, but also we actually do desk tracking without sensors effectively. So a lot of businesses have sensors on their desks if it's hot desking, as well as say the Wi-Fi. But if you're working at an engineering firm, you might have physical displays on the desks, and then you dock your laptop, and that dock is connected to a switch, and we can look at whether the ports have gone high to decide whether someone's sitting there.
Right.
There's a lot of nuance around that because sometimes the docks hold the port high, but then they don't have a MAC address. So then you can see, is the port high and there's a MAC address. And then we can use the MAC address to try and work out who owns that laptop. And we do that by integrating with, say, the directory services. And we can look at the logs. So we actually analyze authentication logs. So just a totally separate integration.
Right.
Which gives us an IP address and a username. And then we look up that IP address and find that it's associated with this MAC address sitting at this desk. And so then we can say this person is sitting at this desk because they docked their laptop there. So it's a very accurate way of looking at desk utilization and where someone's definitely sitting. And so that's all using mostly dashboard API. And then for Wi-Fi, we mostly use the scanning API.
Yeah, and like you said, all of this is for a reason. It's really because of those compelling use cases that we have in our physical spaces that we leverage this kind of technology, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and what people don't realize, I think, is that all these systems are there already. All the information's there already. So sometimes people are nervous about being tracked, in inverted commas, because we do quite a lot of work to not actually track anyone in an identifiable manner unless you're actually searching for them. We only look up who is which dot when you actually want to locate somebody. Otherwise, it's all just MAC addresses moving around a building.
Yep.
But that information all exists on pretty much any wireless network or any network really already, and you've already got your authentication logs happening in the background. So just being able to pull that information together to come up with a cohesive view of what's happening in the environment is quite powerful.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, the technology has been allowing us to do various forms of identifying a location, at least of a device, for quite some time. So I think it's just, as long as you play fair and people are aware that you're using it and the reasoning behind it, then I think it's a lot easier to implement. Okay, well, let's turn our attention to the future then. What do you see next for this technology? What is it that you get frustrated about that you would love to be able to do in this space, but you're currently unable to?
There's not much that isn't possible these days. Like if you have a vision for something, it's often with enough money,
right,
possible to achieve. But I am excited about the MV Sense cameras. They should offer a wide range of new experiences, lowering the cost of, say, instead of having desk sensors, we can use a camera to work out if people are sitting at desks or not, which sort of lowers the cost and technology barrier and installation and things like that. So that's exciting. I feel like a lot of the biggest barrier is probably configuration. So actually collecting data and collating things, which I'm not sure is an easy problem to solve. So like if you want to know if someone's sitting at a desk and they've got a dock on the desk, there's a cable run going back to a back room, and you have to document which port that desk is plugged into, and that is probably the biggest challenge in terms of doing a smart building these days.
There's a lot to think about, and all of it's relatable. I mean, that's what's interesting, I think, about this kind of work is I'm quite sure that you're getting deep into the weeds on code and implementation via a number of different APIs, but as far as explaining it certainly tells good stories. So that's a nice place to be, I think. I guess the last question I have is where people can learn more about PlaceOS.
Yeah, PlaceOS.com is probably the biggest resource. People are welcome to shoot me an email as well, which is steve@placeos.com. Yeah.
Fantastic. And actually, I had a look at the website myself, and there's some great explainer videos on there. So good way to sort of get a sense above and beyond what we've discussed today, what is capable with this technology. All right, Stephen, that has been such an interesting conversation. We've touched on so many different interesting use cases there, and it's just great to see again how not just Meraki, but all of the different sources that you're using, how it can be brought together to really enhance the experiences that we're providing in our workplaces. And I think there's a lot of food for thought there. And again, I would just say for our listeners, if you have any ideas that you'd like to contribute, obviously Stephen's provided you with his contact details there. Reach out to Stephen, reach out to us, whatever works for you. We're all learning together in this big journey. So Stephen, thank you once again. Really do appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Simon. It's been a pleasure.
All right, so thank you again for joining Meraki Unboxed. We will be back in a couple more weeks with another episode. So until then, stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye for now.